Tonight, court canceled. Details on the unavoidable circumstance that prevented testimony today and the possible impact. Plus, with no court in session, we're looking closer at what's already been said on the stand and how it could be going over with the jury.
Nobody showed me anything of his investigation.
Okay, so let's wrap this up. I'm not letting any of this in.
The reasoning behind a mid-testimony legal move done away from jurors. And our legal experts delve deeper into the new evidence and what it could mean. Canton Confidential, the Karen Reed murder trial, starts right now.
Well, almost everyone had arrived at court this morning in the Karen Reed murder trial, as usual, only to be told to go home. Good evening. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm J.C. Monahan.
And I'm Glenn Jones. We now know it was because of Karen Reed's health. Our John Maroney takes us through today's developments.
The trial has been moving quite quickly.
All's quiet at Norfolk Superior Court with an unexpected day off in the murder retrial of Karen Reed. The break coming with the defendant suffering an undisclosed illness.
Until the last 3 days, it seemed like we were really going to end relatively quickly with the prosecution's case.
Last on the stand, State Police Sergeant Yuri Bukhenik, a key witness in the case against the 45-year-old defendant, who's pleaded not guilty to hitting John O'Keefe with her SUV and leaving him to die in the snow. Michael Coyne is NBC 10 Boston's chief legal analyst.
Bukhenik could have done better, a lot better, by just answering the questions directly, not appearing so evasive, and taking the hits when they came.
The prosecution says the relationship between Reed and O'Keefe was strained. The couple went on a trip to Aruba before O'Keefe died, where they apparently fought over his alleged involvement with another woman. Prosecutors are now asking for permission to tell the jury about the incident after first saying they wouldn't.
The idea that she's so full of rage with respect to that incident in Aruba, that could provide some motivation for murder.
I hit him. I hit him. I hit him.
Special Prosecutor Hank Brennan is winding down his case. So far, he hasn't called former State Trooper Michael Proctor, as well as ATF agent Brian Higgins and Brian Albert, both of whom the defense says are third-party culprits responsible for John O'Keefe's death. The question remains, will the defense call them if the prosecution doesn't?
I don't know whether having to call those witnesses and put that evidence in themselves, whether it'll be quite as effective. The jury's already heard it now. Hopefully it's resonated with them as the defense would like.
As of right now, the trial is set to resume tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. In Dedham, John Maroney, back to you.
All right, joining the conversation now is our courtroom insider, Sue Okonnell, and retired Massachusetts Judge Jack Lew. Thank you so much for being here. Sue, we wanted to start with you simply because you were in court when the announcement was made that there would be no court today. How did that play? How did it go down? And what were the reaction?
Well, that overstates the announcement part, JC, because there was a lot of confusion. So I arrived at the court like I usually do at 8:30, and there was actually a line to pick up our press passes, which we have to get on the first floor when we get in. And nothing was happening, and there was a lot of hubbub, a lot of people in and out of offices. We could tell something was happening, but it's a courthouse. There are other trials going on. So you always have to keep in mind it may not be about us. And then as we were waiting in line, someone looked at their email and saw that we got an email from the court saying that court was not happening today due to an unforeseen circumstance. So then we all just went and sat and waited to see who we saw. We saw Hank Brennan from the prosecution. We saw Adam Lally. We didn't see the clerk of courts. We looked around to see if there's anybody else we might recognize. We each start calling our contacts, our sources, trying to see if we could find out what happened. And of course, we had some information. We didn't have it confirmed. Other stations had information, and we just sort of waited to see if there was going to be an announcement. So no official announcement. But as we and others are reporting, Karen called in sick today because she wasn't feeling well, and the court just said, that's fine, we'll move on.
So, Judge, on that basis, the defendant is unwell. Is that a reasonable reason to hit pause on everything?
Absolutely. The defendant, Ms. Reed, right now is under just a wacky amount of pressure, super pressure, and it's understandable that she would get sick from the psychological pressure. And if it's such a long trial, I wouldn't be shocked if other players need a day of rest just to handle it, you know?
Well, the judge has been very vocal in trying to protect the time and space of the jurors. She's done that repeatedly. We want to show you an example from yesterday when she spoke up during testimony over concerns the questioning could go longer than expected.
They didn't step outside, but once he was invited, according to your narrative, wouldn't they have a discussion outside where he was invited to come out?
So, Mr. Jackson, I just want to ask you, how much longer do you think?
Not long. I can finish this up if you give me probably 10 minutes.
Okay. Jurors are saying yes. Is it okay with all the jurors? We usually break at 4.
I don't want to overstep. I'm happy to stop now, but I think I can get it finished.
I'd like to finish with this witness and not have to bring it back again tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. I appreciate the accommodation.
So, Judge, this is a complicated case, lots of witnesses. What are your thoughts about the judge's ability to keep things moving?
This judge is a saint. This judge is a saint. And so if that judge said that, then you know 10 times that was permissible. I mean, there's a range. The judge has wide discretion. So the judge said something tells you it went way beyond what it should have. And, of course, it did, because of the extreme evasive nature of the sergeant's testimony, just delaying and delaying. But the judge is so nice to everybody and totally neutral to each side, to the defense and to the prosecution, right down the middle.
So now that we know the jury hasn't been told why there was no court today, it's human nature for people to speculate. How, from both of you, let's start with Judge Liu, do you think this could impact the jurors if they never do find out why it was canceled at the last minute?
I don't think so. I think they'd infer it's something like that. You know, or maybe they think the judge, after all the judge has had to endure, maybe they think the judge needs a day off. But no, I don't think it'll be a big deal. They are going to be so emotionally invested in this trial that they're going to just fly right past those things.
I imagine she will tell them tomorrow, or if we have court tomorrow, that it was due to illness. She may not specify whose illness, but my experience of watching her now from the last trial and this trial is she is as transparent as she can be. When they're out for a sidebar that takes a long time, she tells them it was a sidebar. We were working on this. She doesn't need to tell them any of those things.
You mentioned State Police Sergeant Bukhenik, and he was on the stand for 3 days, and yesterday you heard our chief legal analyst, Michael Coyne, say Bukhenik appeared evasive. We want to show you a small portion of yesterday's redirect and cross-examination.
Why did you speak to her at her home rather than ask her or force her to come to the police station?
Same reasons we interviewed the witnesses, the driving conditions, the time that it would take for her to respond, the comfort of her own home or her parents' home. Mission was to go through the phone to look for digital evidence that's related to the crime. The fact that he wrote no nude so far, I cannot comment on.
You cannot comment on, or you don't want to comment on?
I don't know what he was looking for in that specific time.
All right, that's just a snippet. But Jack, you had already talked about, how do you think that this impacts the jury when they see a witness rapid fire answer when it's prosecution and slow and in many ways evasive when it is on cross-examination?
Yeah, crazy, poorly trained. I think the jurors understand it better than we do because of their collective wisdom. Not necessarily a formal education, but probably a good helping of that. And they know that that is super evasive, what he did. His testimony was worth maybe a little more than a full day, something like that, and he delayed it all that time. They understand that. But the defense should not go and celebrate just yet, because the substantive impact of his testimony might have been devastating.
The judge says 3 times longer than expected.
Absolutely.
For that testimony.
I mean, you have to understand, I can imagine they feel like their time is being wasted when you can't answer if that's someone's handwriting or that is a warrant. You know, you feel like you get anxious, like, can you just do it? Then you see the comparison, right? And then there are times when someone is being evasive and saying they can't remember, when they absolutely, honestly can't remember, and you can see the difference when they're saying, I don't know, I think that meeting was on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, as opposed to, I don't recall because I can't read it in the report. And that gives the jury information as to when they're honestly not remembering, when they're being evasive, when they're telling the truth, and when they're actually straight out lying.
Let's narrow into one part of Sergeant Bukhenik's testimony. It had to do with the sudden voir dire. This is where the judge is able to preview the testimony and then make a ruling on its admissibility. Let's listen.
Attached in the text message that I was shown from that investigation. Nobody showed me anything of his investigation.
Okay, so let's wrap this up.
Okay, that was basically all I had.
Okay, all right. Do you want to be heard, Mr. Jackson?
No.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not letting any of this in.
I think it's all admissible, but I understand the court's ruling was if he doesn't have personal knowledge of it, didn't have it then you're not going to let it in. It's over our objection, but that's been noted.
Okay, so you got your voir dire, and I'm glad we fleshed it all out.
So
And then she said, and you get 25 minutes for lunch, not the 50.
This voir dire happened on day 3 of Bukhenik's testimony. The jury was not in the room. It isn't typical, at least we haven't seen, of voir dire sort of pop up in the middle of someone's testimony in this way. Is that rare to happen?
It's pretty common, and actually all those voir dires they had long before trial, they could have stuffed them in like this, just the same. And there's an argument that might have, well, that might have been better. I don't know. But, yeah, that's pretty common.
All right. She made a decision quickly.
She did, in which case Alan Jackson still objected to the decision. In the courtroom, do you think that the feel, you've seen Alan Jackson now for so many times, that he knew that was coming, that this was performative more than actually, that they were going to gain anything?
Yeah, he didn't continue to make the, it was kind of clear he went through the motions, and it was kind of clear what the judge was going to rule, and then he was kind of like accepting it. But I defer to you, but now it's on record if there's an issue that he objected to it, and if there's an appeal aspect to it, at least they have it on the record.
All right. Jack, Sue, thank you so much. Don't go away. We have much more coming back with defense attorney Morgietta Diversier after the break. And we're taking a look at new evidence presented by Reed's defense team. There is video and flirty text to go over, and we are answering more viewer questions. Don't go anywhere.
And before we go to break, we want to take a moment to remember John O'Keefe, the victim in this case. The Braintree native was a Boston police officer who became the legal guardian of his niece and nephew after the children lost both of their parents to illness. You're watching Canton Confidential, the Karen Reed murder trial.
Don't miss any of the Karen Reed murder trial. Get the full recap of what happened in court, expert analysis, and what we could see next. This is coverage you won't see anywhere else. Canton Confidential, weeknights at 7 on NBC 10 Boston.
We're back now with defense attorney Morgietta Diversier and our courtroom insider Sue Okonnell. So with court canceled today, it gave us a little time to look more closely at new evidence introduced yesterday. We want to start with the footage of ATF agent Brian Higgins at the Canton Police Station. He was seen on surveillance cameras in and around the police station in the early morning hours of January 29th, 2022, just hours before John O'Keefe would be found outside 34 Fairview Road. The video timestamped just before 1:30 a.m. So that video is new evidence presented by the defense. Brian Higgins did testify to what we saw, but this is the first time that we're seeing the video. So Morgietta, now that the video is there, did it corroborate what we already knew? And more importantly, did the defense get anything out of that?
It definitely corroborated everything that we have seen so far. And as I've said to other people, the jury is going to remember what they hear and did they hear it right? But now they're going to actually see this, and they're going to be able to take this video back with them, along with other videos during their deliberation. So this is more impactful than just hearing the testimony from Bukhenik. You can actually see it and, start to think about, well, why is he there? The angle, why is he walking around like that? So I feel like it landed more impactfully than just the testimony that we heard.
Another piece of video that we saw yesterday was the Sallyport video, was the focus of Reed's lawyers. That's where officers took Reed's SUV to be processed by investigators. The video raised red flags during the first trial because someone noticed the official police video was flipped. The defense claims the reversal plays into a police cover-up theory, but Sergeant Bukhenik said on the stand that inverted video is quite common in Canton. Listen.
Did you investigate and learn whether or not there was any other video in addition to that interior Sallyport back wall where video was set up by the town of Canton that appears inverted rather than forward?
Objection.
I'll allow it.
Yes, the investigation revealed that multiple cameras had a lens applied to it that was inverted. I believe it is inside the Canton PD, the hallways, possibly. And if I am not mistaken, the other locations within the town of Canton.
So you were in the courtroom both times that this video was introduced into evidence. The second time around was vastly different than the first.
Well, the first time they discovered it, Karen Reed saw it and pointed to it, and we came back here and we had our
the whole
folks
room was
we all
alive.
worked on it. It was alive. What are they doing? You know, and I forget who presented, if it was Bukhenik last time. They didn't know. I mean, it was clear to me that it was a surprise to everyone. So this time, kind of like the self-inflicted wound here, because it was inverted, they still got to start in the same spot, the defense did, and point out it was inverted, and then they got to spend more time talking about where Proctor was or where Proctor wasn't, or where it was. So it wasn't so much about the video being inverted this time. It was that no one noticed, and of course saying it was true and accurate, and having poor Bukhenik try to say that a mirror image is true and accurate, but it's not, as we all know, and on and on. And then, of course, we find out that in Canton, apparently,
it's just what they do.
I'm not racist. I hate everybody. I mean, that's basically, we didn't like pick on Karen to do this. All of our cameras work this way. So I think it's a little magical area, Canton, where things are mirrored image sometimes. So it didn't have the same impact.
No.
But again, it did highlight what the prosecution didn't want highlighted because of a self-inflicted wound.
Okay, so we also saw more text messages between Karen Reed and Brian Higgins. During the first trial, snippets of their conversation were read out loud in court. This time, there were many more messages, and it indicated a flirty relationship at times. Morgietta, with your experience, this type of evidence that it expanded from the first time, is that going to help this third-party culprit defense? And if so, how?
Absolutely, because context is everything, especially in this trial. You've seen the prosecution putting in clips of Karen Reed's interviews when they want to, how they want to, in between witnesses. And this is one of the pieces of evidence that we've seen so far that we're seeing everything, right? And so this third-party culprit, it's not that they have to raise anything. Remember, the defense doesn't have to bring any claims or anything as part of their case in chief. But if you're looking at the totality of the conspiracy with the inverted video, with all these messages, it's really pointing to the reasonable doubt. They don't have to, but the more that they do, jurors, viewers, everyone's starting to see, okay, maybe there really is a conspiracy, and it's going to continue to land over and over again because the prosecution is kind of ignoring it, and the defense is like, oh, no, 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 let's bring this right to the light.
All right, this brings us to one of our viewer questions, the third-party culprit. This is Mickey from Belmont, California. Hello, California. He asks, if Karen Reed is found not guilty, and this retrial shows that John O'Keefe's murder happened inside the home on 34 at Fairview, will that automatically start another trial against who is possibly guilty, or would they go free? Morgietta?
So again, it's the district attorney's office's job to decide who they're going to prosecute, what case they're going to put together, and if they're going to put it together. And as we've said many times on this show, we have to think about the O'Keefe family. How many times are they really going to put them through this, right? Even if there's this concrete evidence, unless it's without a shadow of a doubt, how many times are you going to put them through this, right? So, of course, they can retry this case if Karen Reed gets a not guilty, but do you want to at this point? And is it going to be as shoddy as some of the other things that we've seen in this trial? And the district attorney's office really has to take a hard look at that.
And remember, the defense just has to bring reasonable doubt. They're not solving the case. Right. So they just have to say, perhaps this person did it. And Glenn, as you have reported 1,000 times, this investigation, although Bukhenik said it's still ongoing, is considered closed.
Right. That's the way the state police classifies it. We've heard from John O'Keefe's family, friends, and investigators all testify. And now our viewer Shelley wants to know, will there be character witnesses for Karen Reed? We saw John's mom take the stand during the trial. Sue, what are your thoughts on that? We certainly didn't see anything quite like that in the first trial.
Well, we did kind of, because some of the Commonwealth's witnesses went on and talked about how Karen was great with the kids and they had a great relationship.
That is true.
So they sort of served as that. But I don't know that there'll be character witnesses, because because I think it also opens, you're better to know than I, opens the door to other questions that they may not want to answer.
Yeah, I think we may not, I think the defense is focusing right now on the holes that they're trying to cover up that the prosecution is bringing to light. I honestly don't know whether or not they need the character witnesses for Karen Read, because again, they don't have to prove a case at all, right? But if they are going to prove anything, they're going to focus on the third-party culprit theory that they're going after, and they're also going to talk about the police investigation. That alone should be enough reasonable doubt for them to bring to the jury, as opposed to talking about Karen herself, because Karen could be an amazing person or a horrible person, but is she a murderer? And that's what they really need to focus on.
So just to remind everybody, we're just into the prosecution's case. Still a lot of witnesses left to see how they're going to play out their scenario of how this happened.
And our expectation is that court will restart tomorrow. Thank you so much, Morgietta and Sue.